Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. My name is Jennifer Homendy, and I'm a member with the National Transportation Safety Board. With me is our investigator in charge, Aaron Sauer. I want to start by thanking a number of entities and people who have been really helpful to the NTSB while we have been here on this particular accident. The U.S. Coast Guard, TEMSCO helicopters, Alaska State Troopers, Ketchikan Volunteer Rescue Squad, and a host of fantastic volunteers. We really appreciate all your efforts. After yesterday's media briefing, Aaron and I and our structures expert went to the accident scene to start getting a lay of the land. And then yesterday evening, we held our organizational meeting. At the organizational meeting, we established parties to the investigation. And here's what I mean by parties to the investigation. These participants are part of our fact-finding portion of the investigation. These are technical experts that we need information, who can help us obtain information. They are not part of the analysis of the accident. They have no role in developing our reports, and they do not play a role in development of our recommendations. The parties to the investigation are the Federal Aviation Administration, TAC-1 Air, and then two accredited representatives. One is the Transportation Safety Board of Canada, whose advisor will be Viking, and the Australian Transportation Safety Board. There were Canadian and Australian nationals on board the aircraft, and both of the aircraft were manufactured in Canada. In addition to establishing the parties to the investigation, we established working groups and designated the participants from the list of parties to those working groups. We have three working groups: airworthiness. The airworthiness working group will focus on the structures, the mechanical aspects of both aircraft, and maintenance of both aircraft. We have an operations working group. The operations working group will look at both operators. They will look at the pilots and then company policies and procedures and look at whether those policies and procedures were followed. Our third working group is human performance. And the human performance working group will focus on pilot performance, pilot decision-making, and fitness for duty. That was all yesterday. This brings us to day 2. So we are day 2 of the investigation, and a lot of work was conducted today. We requested a lot of information. Those information requests are in, and we're waiting for information back. We started our interview process, starting early this morning. We interviewed the pilot of the TAC-1 airplane, and we've been interviewing passengers. Now, I want to state that, because I know there's going to be questions on those interviews. Those interviews started very early this morning. They are continuing as I speak. They have been in a room. I have not had the opportunity to speak with any of the investigators or participants in those interviews, so I have no information on those interviews. What I do have information on is recovery of the wreckage, and that was a major part of our day, and it's ongoing. What I decided to do was bring with me a couple of visuals. First, this is the preliminary data that we have on the flight track of the TAC-1 plane and the Mountain airplane. The track on top, that is the TAC-1 airplane. The TAC-1 plane was in a southwest heading inbound to Ketchikan, descending from between 3,800 and 4,000 feet to about 3,300 feet. Now, somebody asked me yesterday whether this was normal, was it a rapid descent? We did not see anything abnormal about this. This is, over the course of several miles. The plane was traveling at about 126 knots, which is 145 miles per hour. The mountain airplane, which is the line on the below that, was traveling at a west-southwest heading, also inbound to Ketchikan, at maintaining an altitude of about 3,300 feet at 106 knots, which is about 122 miles per hour. Now, we have a second slide to show where the wreckage is. The TAC-1 plane is the DHC-3T Otter. The TAC-1 plane was submerged in 75 feet of water and only about, I would say, 50 feet off the shore. The TAC-1 plane was recovered today. It was taken by a crane, placed on a barge. A tarp was placed over it, and so that will be transferred back to Ketchikan on the barge and placed in a secure hangar. The mountain air plane, there's a significant difference in the debris field. The debris field is much larger for the mountain airplane, which is the DHC-2 Beaver. The estimated debris field, it's estimated at between 1,000 feet by 3,000 feet, so 1,000 feet by 3,000 feet. When I left the scene this afternoon, the barge had moved from where they placed the otter on the barge. They moved over to where the site where the beaver had crashed, and began the process of putting ropes around that to secure it so that they could place it also on the barge and move it to Ketchikan. We left and they were in the process of doing that. So tomorrow, our focus will continue to be interviews. We will also focus on still recovering the debris, and then we will begin to put together the structures of both aircraft in the hangar to see how the two airplanes came together. We will have a preliminary report available in about 2 weeks. This will be our last media briefing, but we are not leaving the scene. We have a lot of work to do. So for media questions, please refer to our staff, our media relations staff back in DC, and we'll get back to you. Now I'm going to take questions. Please raise your hand, state your name and your affiliation. I'll recognize you. Any questions? Yes. The question is, can I explain what I saw at the accident scene and the wreckage? On the Otter wreckage, it is submerged in 75 feet of water, so it was very difficult to see. When we went out to the crash site yesterday, there was a rope that was placed on it with a buoy, so we knew where it was. So that has now, it's a very large piece that is now on the barge, again wrapped in blue tarp. When the Beaver, the mountain airplane, a portion of it is in the water, and the floats are visible from there. The debris, there's a lot of debris in different areas, including on the mountainside. And so that'll take some time to collect that. Next. Yes?
You mentioned yesterday about looking into whether or not flight plans have been filed. Have you been able to do that?
The question is, have we been able to verify whether flight plans were filed? that is something we have requested, and we're still looking into that and waiting for that information back. Yes?
Alexis Sage from Channel 9 Australia. Just a couple of questions about the Australian. How will the NTSB be ensuring that the Australian man's family is getting the right information about what went wrong?
The question is, how will the NTSB ensure that information is relayed back to the families in Australia and also the families in Canada? I'll just add to that because it's the same process. We have a family assistance team here. Our family assistance program is actually required by law, and we have a terrific team here on the ground who has had several family meetings, both in Ketchikan. They will be working in Anchorage, and I believe possibly Seattle as well. And through that process, there is continuing communication throughout the investigative process that they will provide to the they will provide information to the families, and include all the way up through when we do the final report, and when the board meeting has their board meeting, they are also invited to attend all that as well.
And the Australian father, we understand he was in the Beaver, but can you shed any more light on him and where he was sitting in the aircraft and that sort of thing?
I am not able to provide that. The question is, am I able to provide information on where the Australian national was in the plane? I do not have that information at that time. At this time, our family assistance team is with the different family members and at the hospitals, and so that's not information that I have.
Just lastly, you mentioned at the beginning that the Australian Transportation Board is involved. Can you just tell me a bit more about how they'll be involved in the investigation?
So, and the question is, how is the Australian Transportation Safety Board involved in the investigation? It's similar to how we would be involved if a aircraft was in an accident in another country, but it was manufactured here in the United States. They are technical advisors to the NTSB, but they aren't actually part of the investigation, but they're more technical advisors. So they'll have access to the facts around the collision. Is there anything you want to add to that? No? Okay.
What sort of, the fact that there was no cockpit reporter or data reporter in either float plane, what sort of challenges does that create from an investigative point of view in terms of what actually happened?
Okay, so the question is, what challenges does it present for the NTSB to not have a cockpit voice recorder or a flight data recorder in both planes? The NTSB conducts a number of investigations where there are no cockpit voice recorders or flight data recorders in planes. We have other ways of obtaining information. Information is available from some technology that was on the TAC-1 plane. There's information from the Federal Aviation Administration. Then there's information we can generate from other sources. Yes?
Will Carr with ABC News. Can you explain why there would be debris on the mountainside at the site of the Beaver?
And the question is, can I explain why there is debris on the mountainside where the Beaver is? That is something we're going to be looking at. As part of the investigation, we'll collect the debris, and then in the hangar, we will start putting together the structure of the aircraft, and that's something we'll have to evaluate as part of the investigation.
And does how far away the two sites are, does that tell you anything about the actual crash?
The question is, how will the distance of the site have, will that tell us anything as part of the crash? Certainly that will be looked at as well. I think we calculated today that it was about, straight across is about a little under a mile. From one to the other, it's a little bit over a mile. Yes?
Layla with KRDB in Ketchikan. So the FAA said that both planes were equipped with NTSB transponders, and I was wondering whether they were working, if you know, and whether that would complete a fact.
The question is, were the transponders working, and did that play a factor in the accident? Again, that is part of our investigative process. We will be looking at that. One thing I would also offer is, in the course of the investigation, we may decide to do a visibility study. And that would be looking at the field of vision in both cockpits to see what both pilots could see, sort of looking at the structures. Was there anything that may have blocked their view in any way? So that's something we will likely be looking at as well.
Do you know anything about wind up at that altitude on Monday?
Do you have any information?
Meteorology.
Oh, okay. So the question is, do we know anything about wind at that time? Our meteorologists back in DC are looking at that information right now. So we hope to have more information. Weather is always something we look at as part of an investigation. You had your hand up.
Hank Davis, KTUU. Is there a timeline as far as getting both planes back here to start piecing things together? And based on the wreckage that you guys have already recovered, is there anything that you guys can kind of glean off of that first plane at this point?
Two-part question. The first part was, well, can we glean anything as part of the wreckage? I'm sorry, can you repeat the first part of your question?
Just looking for a general timeline on...
For removing the planes and getting the wreckage back here. The answer to that on the Otter, the good portion of it is on the barge and headed back to Ketchikan to go to a secure hangar. The Beaver, that was in the process of being recovered and put in the barge. I suspect it'll be a short time before it is in that hangar. It will take several days to get the additional part of the wreckage. And can we glean anything? It's too early for that.
If I can have one more question. Is there any sort of safety equipment that either of the planes might have had on board not operating that might have let them know there was another plane in their area? Or have you guys been able to tell any of that at this point?
Have we been able to tell if there was any sort of technology in the plane that would have told them, whether they could see each other? Technology does exist. That is part of our investigation where we will be looking at that for both planes. Since we're just in the process of recovering the structures, that's going to take a little bit of time.
Last question.
Anybody else? Great. Thank you very much.